probably heard these words before.
Brother's home in Busan, this was the new...
They might seem ordinary, like something from an exciting and dramatic series. But have you ever imagined that the story could be real?
Truth and Reconciliation Commission into a catalogue of reported abuse. Of room called the head of the 9,000.
Let me tell you the truth about Squid Game. Once upon a time in South Korea, specifically in the year 1982, there was a young boy named Chung who was in elementary school. He was young, smart, and organized, attending school daily. He even helped his mother with all the household chores, since she was the only one in his life. After school and helping his mother, he would go to work. Yes, at such a young age, he worked to support his mother and their home because his father was working far away for long periods. One day that same year, Chung didn't return home as usual. His mother waited for him for hours until midnight. She thought he might be in the city, enjoying, playing, exploring, and eating. And that was indeed what was happening. When Chung realized it was late, he decided to head home. However, on his way, 2 policemen stopped him and asked, "Where are you from? Are you alone?" Chung innocently replied that he was alone and heading home. The officers decided to take him in their car, saying they would drop him off at home because it was late. But this decision would change Chung's life. To understand what was happening in Korea, we need to go back before 1982. Unusually, children, boys and girls, were disappearing without a trace. The government couldn't find these children, and years went by without any leads. The strange thing was that the same scenario kept repeating. 2 policemen stopping children, or even a young woman and her little brother, telling them they would take them home. But in reality, they were taken to the police station, where they were gathered with others who had been abducted, children, women, men, and the elderly. After interrogation, they were told they would be taken home, but instead, they were loaded into a large truck. This truck didn't take them home, but to an unknown place. There, they vanished from our world, taken to a place known by no one. Inside the truck, there was no light, and it was sealed shut, preventing them from seeing where they were going or what their fate would be. This is now known as the Squid Game. Upon arrival, one by one, they stepped out of the truck into a strange place, surrounded by high walls, guarded by suspicious-looking guards. Isolated from the outside world, the place was deep in the woods. Anyone who spoke or asked questions was beaten. The location had different levels, with each room housing at least 100 people wearing a uniform, blue with a white stripe on the shoulders. Everyone was reduced to a number with no names. Those who wanted to remember their identity had to recall their number. Every person was merely a number, with the same haircut, the same schedules, the same clothes. They weren't allowed to change their outfits, which they had worn since their arrival. From the youngest to the oldest, everyone followed orders, and those who didn't faced punishment. They were awakened by loud alarms to start their miserable day. Anyone attempting to escape was killed. Shockingly, this wasn't the only place. There were two others. These centers were like cities with factories, schools, and churches. Their miserable lives included eating decayed food in small quantities and wearing the same clothes for a year. The places were infested with insects and worms. Women faced assault, and if any became pregnant, doctors were called to terminate the pregnancies. It was a hopeless, grim existence. They weren't playing children's games like in the TV series. They were forced into hard labor, regardless of age. Those who refused were beaten until they bled, tortured daily to prevent further disobedience. Attempting to escape meant death. You might wonder why. What was the point? And why didn't anyone save these people? Where was the government? The answer is even more horrifying. The government was behind it. The Brothers Welfare Center was supposedly a place for the homeless, the disabled, or those considered a burden to society. The government presented it as a paradise on earth, but only the government and the numbers knew the truth. Even the disabled were placed in an area called zombies, where they were drugged and chained to prevent them from bothering the guards. Remember Chung? His father and mother searched for him everywhere to no avail. His father even approached the police, pleading and crying to find his child. But the police deemed Chung's father unsuitable for society and decided to get rid of him by sending him to the inhumane center where he found his son. However, Chung bore the marks of wounds and beatings, no longer a child, but a number among numbers. The police continued portraying a perfect image of this center until this horrifying chapter was closed in South Korea in 1986. This moment began when a prosecutor named Kim was wandering alone in the woods. He saw something strange, a group of people who appeared to be guards, and another group who looked like slaves or laborers, all wearing numbered uniforms. The guards were beating them with sticks and accompanied by guard dogs. After some time, the guards led the laborers into a place behind iron doors and locked them in. Furious and frightened, Kim started investigating to uncover the truth. He realized this place was a government-run center called Brothers, not just one, but three. The site he saw housed 900 children and 3,000 other people. Kim decided to visit the center and went to the office of the director in charge. Inside, he saw a large safe, which he ordered to be opened. Inside, he found $20 million. The director's name was Park, and during interrogation, Park arrogantly refused to answer, confidently stating that it was none of Kim's business and that the place was government-run. The shocking truth was that this initiative came from the highest authority, the President of South Korea, who appointed Park to this position. This center began its operation when the Olympics came to South Korea in 1948, with the goal of removing anything they deemed inappropriate from society. The homeless and disabled were considered trash. During Park's investigation, he arrogantly claimed, "I saved you and cleaned Korea. I am not a criminal." However, he was only charged with negligence and sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. After the truth about this place came to light, it wasn't immediately shut down. They merely changed the name and location, continuing until it was finally closed in the late 1980s. Over this period, about 40,000 people were tortured and forced into labor as human numbers. The case was reopened in 2011 due to protests by some of the people who had been in the center, feeling humiliated and tortured by their country. Some children who had grown up there had forgotten their identities and families, while others ended up in psychiatric hospitals due to the severe trauma they endured. They all stood in court demanding their rights, but the government claimed they could do nothing. Because too much time had passed. The truth was, the government had orchestrated it. Even after Park's release from prison, he enjoyed his millions until his death in 2012. Tragically, Chung and his father died inside that place from torture, beatings, and hard labor as numbers. This is the story behind Squid Game.
Jazeera. Following the closure of the centre, the founder, Park In-kyun, was imprisoned for embezzlement. But victims say the alleged abuse and killings of inmates went unpunished. Park died in 2016, but some of his family had moved to Australia and begun new church and business ventures.
I'd really like to ask you about Brothers Home victims.
The Commission says the continuing investigation will take several years and will look into alleged cover-ups by multiple government bodies.
The government should apologize to the victims and make a promise to the public. We hope that history takes note and this never happens again.
Among the most vulnerable members of South Korean society, the victims of the notorious centre say their suffering has gone largely overlooked for years, and that it's only now their country is coming to terms with their plight that they might finally see justice.